It is TAW Live. Come and see everywhere apart from Facebook. I am Neil Atkinson and I am joined by Adam, Melia, Dan Austin and John Gibbons. Coming up, we are going to be speaking to Stephen Smith and Gary Judge about Access and the work that they do involving the boxing community in there as well. And we are also, John Gibbons, who are you speaking to?
Speaking to Adam Rowe. He's got a new special out on YouTube. I watched it last night. It's funny.
Is it funny?
Yeah.
It's got jokes.
I laughed.
That's good news, given its premise.
He's coming in.
Is he
in half an hour?
Is he?
Good news for that as well.
He's coming in 43 minutes. It's a good job you're entertained by it. That is very, very important indeed. We will be talking about the game against Brighton and Hove Albion. If you are watching this on YouTube / other platforms that aren't Facebook, you will see that me, John, and Dan are gathered together at the studio because as soon as Adam Rowe leaves this building, we are also leaving this building and jumping in a car.
If he's not careful.
If he plays his cards right, some would say. If he plays his cards right, he might end up coming. Yeah, rattling all the way down to Brighton. That is what we're doing. We're doing a live show in Brighton tonight at the Arch. If you want to come along, we will be at the Arch this evening. But before then, we're going to talk about the game coming up against Brighton. But we're also going to have a look in the general at the top 10 picture, somewhat framed by Chelsea, yet again going to absolute pieces last night. Let's start with that, to be honest with you, Dan. They go and get the funky new loan signing. They're paying 12 million quid for 6 months. And he gets himself sent off. Now, he was lively before then, by all accounts. Let me be clear, I did not watch that game last night, and I don't expect you will have watched it either. But you are on top of the general information. And Chelsea seem absolutely mad at the minute, and they've seemed absolutely mad since Todd Bowley's turned up.
Yeah, just increasingly miserable as well, to go with the madness. It seemed like at the start it was at least funny. If you're just lashing a load of money at different people and sometimes getting results and sometimes not, when it's exclusively not, as it has been since before the World Cup, I think now, then that's an awful lot less interesting. They've just spent it on an awful lot of people that they, within 6 months, have needed to replace. So they signed various centre-halves.
The Koulibaly thing is the maddest, quietly.
They've already bought another €40 million centre-half. They bought a forward. They've already had to pay €12 million to have a forward come in on loan. They've bought another forward as well, haven't they, from Sweden? I think he's come from. So they've just not done it very well. The man seems to have. I mean, he must have a sense of business acumen to have reached the point that he has in his life. I'm not buying that like billionaires are inherently intelligent people by any means, because I think in an awful lot of cases they're not. But he must have had something at some point, and nothing since he joined Chelsea actually suggests it. So he's either lost it or gone insane. Is what it implies.
So Premier League football, not Premier League football does this to people. I think this is one of the things to remember at all times, that there's a long lineage of football driving successful people wherever they started from in life, driving successful people quite mad.
Business people especially, because it's fundamentally not a moneymaker, unless you are involved on like a governance level. Then it's probably not. Even if you're an owner of a really successful team, you're probably at best not losing money, but that's quite hard. And he seems to have had the attitude that he's just going to do what he wants, and that having people talk about him is beneficial to him in some sense. So it might not be to do with Chelsea beneficial, but people around the world being more aware of Todd Bowley and going, oh, isn't Todd Bowley spending money? Maybe he deems his
nice chubby face.
I've never seen his face.
Is it not seen his face? Whoa.
No, I have. He's got longer hair than you'd think.
Much longer hair than you'd think. He looks like he played rhythm guitar for Crosby, Stills and Nash. Adam.
Oh, yeah, I was going to say he looks a bit like Matt Berry in Toast.
He does. We'll get Todd Bowley on screen in a second or two. Adam, the madness of Chelsea, the madness of Bowley, it has a certain amount to recommend it. Purely from a vaudeville basis, I like the fact that we get to know he also was interim sporting director. He has given that up this week, but my God, he is quite something.
Yeah, I mean, it'd be nice if he had Matt Berry's voice in that. Like, I've never heard his voice. If he had that voice as well, that would be good.
Have you heard Harry's audiobook yet?
No.
It sounds a lot like Matt Berry.
It sounds
a lot like Toast. It's funny. It just makes it, all the more farcical.
You're a bit quiet for me, John, which is not something I've ever said in my life.
No one has.
what was I going to say? Yeah, it is funny, and it does suit Chelsea actually. Like if it was happening to Arsenal or don't know, Tottenham. There he is. It would be it would seem a little bit more incongruous. I think it is quite congruous for it to be happening for Chelsea because they are quite circus anyway, aren't they? I think he's of a certain age, and like it's not. So I wouldn't say it's a football club being ran by Twitter, but I think he's on the forums. I think that's that's the kind of that's the level of signing we're having is basically everybody that if you are also of a certain age and have been on the forums, that's the sort of player that, especially like the Koulibaly signing, that is the most of the forum era sign I've ever heard. So yeah, I'm quite enjoying that aspect of it. To be honest, I am still enjoying it. I definitely wouldn't want it.
Not in my life.
Well, yeah, I mean, your life, Neil, though. I mean, I reckon Chelsea's podcasts are getting a lot of mileage out of it. They're probably getting a lot of new subscribers all the time.
Honestly, the money Todd Bowley to make the Anfield Wrap with this sort of conduct, John. That's the good thing about Bowley, is that he's certainly helping the subscription-based podcasts with his chaos. Imagine how many transfer specials you'd have done if you were looking after Chelsea by now.
Yeah, I'd be exhausted. It is. I remember once Chris Barber, who's our unofficial Chelsea correspondent, describing his time supporting Chelsea as chaos and trophies, and I thought that was quite a nice way of putting it. They're very much in a chaos era at the moment, but trophies may follow. Who knows? But it just seems like I do like the idea that Friends Theory's on the forums again. And who he's going to sort of come out with next, and it is a reminder, really, where we as a fan base are having a great debate about ownership at the moment, and it won't necessarily get better. I'm of the general opinion that I think FSG have taken us as far as they can in terms of their model and what they're sort of willing to do, but the idea that someone else will come and be better isn't necessarily true. And I think there's lots of ways that might be the case, in terms of Glazers who are loading all the debt on, or something like Newcastle, which just isn't for me at all. Might be for other people. That's up to you. But also just some mad fella coming in and
that is exactly
what sporting director.
That is what people see. I mean, without him existing, if you asked a lot of people, it seems like a nice American fella, nice looking American fella, looks like Matt Berry, is going to splash the cash a bit more than FSG. That's the danger, isn't it? That is sort of what people say. And what I say.
It is what you say.
But look at look at it. But it is the kind of it seems to be. I think we had a little bit of this when FSG first came in, actually, and I think when people from who from other backgrounds or cultures or sporting institutions try and sort of apply, what they think would work there or what has worked there to football, and I think there was the very stats based approach that FSG sort of came in with, which was the money ball, you're buying runs, and I think sports in America generally a lot more individual, and baseball is a battle similar to cricket, really, between batter and bowler, and whereas with football, it is all about how you come together and how you play together and what is your style of play and who's good at that. And it feels like with Chelsea, that they haven't gone for that at all. It's like, well, who can we buy who's good at football, and then we'll worry about what's going to happen later. And it's never been a successful way to run or develop a team, and that's what you're seeing now. The caveat is they've got loads of injuries, Chelsea, I would say that, and they are unlucky that they get this lad in, and he's probably the best player on the pitch. I did watch it, and then he gets sent off straight away. And it is funny, but they are a mess.
They are good players that they've got, and I actually think that Potter's a good manager. I haven't sort of gone off him, really. I still think he's good, but definitely seems like the wrong manager. They should have got, I don't know, Ancelotti or somebody that's sort of used to mad fellas buying loads of players for him.
I don't think that the Graham Potter's evil enough for that job.
Yeah.
Anyone that's good that manages Chelsea has an inherent level of villainy about them in a pantomime way, and he just seems like a thoroughly nice man in a roll neck jumper, and I don't think it fits quite right. If he was the Arsenal manager, it'd go really well. It'd be exactly right. There's just something metaphysically wrong, and therefore he's not allowed to win games of football and will be sacked because the universe just doesn't accept that he's in that dugout. It's not acceptable to the world. You know what I mean?
Absolutely 100%. I've just Googled Graham Potter's favourite band, and sadly something doesn't come up. I'd like confirmation on this at the next press conference when he thinks he's going to get loads of questions, Adam, about his job. I'd quite like the first journalist, let's just hypothetically say Matt Law of the Daily Mail, sticks his hand up and says, Graham, what are you listening to at the moment? I would absolutely love to know what was on Graham Potter's last Spotify playlist. That's what I want to know about Graham Potter more than anything else. Whereas, as Adam says, it should be that he's an evil genius.
Yes, that was Dan's theory. That's exactly the sort of thing. I mean, like it's much more incongruous that he is Chelsea manager than Chelsea being mad and spending loads of money. That's the thing possibly that isn't right. And I sort of thought a few weeks ago we could do the thing again where, not to tempt fate, we beat a team and they sack the manager the next day. I can sort of see that, but I can also see him potentially not lasting that long, or because they've got another game before they play us. But yeah, his favourite band, I don't know. I mean, instantly the whole Weller lineage pops into my head. It's got to be.
He only likes the Jam.
He only likes the Jam. Well, I was thinking.
What you give us, what you get.
He's got. I mean, he's probably, I don't know how old his kids are, but he's got Tame Impala on in the car, but he'd rather listen to Weller, is my opinion.
I saw a fella in the Asda the other day who was buying Stanley Road for £1, which is a bargain in a way. But I thought, I looked at him and thought, you've got Stanley Road.
John, Fulham then, to go through the top of the table, I'm going to move on to Brighton in a minute or two, but Fulham find themselves... I think that Fulham had a bit of a plan around this season. Don't get me wrong. I'm not acting for a second as though the whole thing's come as some sort of massive surprise. But Fulham find themselves in really good nick, in really good shape. And they've got them 19 games, 31 points on the board. What I think the brilliance had, they've been brilliant that all season, I'm not just saying it because they do it against us first game, is I think the brilliance at sensing weakness, sensing a moment in games or a moment in a season where they can take advantage, because the underlying numbers around Fulham just are not that good. But what they are showing, I think, is a real sense of game intelligence right the way across the pitch. And that stems from the manager, to be fair to the ex-Everton alumni. Normally, once Everton touches you, things won't be the same again. But Marco Silva's managed to wash it off.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Neil, and I've not thought about it, because sometimes teams can talk themselves out of beating, so-called bigger teams. I thought Newcastle did it at Anfield, to be honest with you, for all the talk of, their tactics and what they were doing and stuff like that. They just should have fucking beat us. That's what they should have done.
Yeah.
Forget morals. Forget morals of time wasting and stuff like that. We were rubbish, and it went to 1-1, and they just behaved in a very strange way for a team who should have just gone, oh, we'll just go and win. Fulham would have gone and won at Anfield that night, and that's what they did on the first game of the season. And they've done well whenever I've watched them, which is quite a bit actually. Sort of coincidentally is to approach a game and look at a game and think, rather than play against Chelsea or play against the money, or they've played against the team and they've noticed that there's an opportunity there. Especially when they go down to 10 men, we can go on and win this game, and they have done. They've got good players as well, is what I'd say. They've got energy about them. They've got a Portuguese midfielder who I think we should have bought. I thought we were good at Portugal. So
he's a big lad as well.
He is, and really good at football. And played European football and stuff like that. And our loss, if you call it that, is very much their gain. But they've got other good players as well. Last night they're getting goals off the bench and stuff like that. Traditionally they've struggled for goals generally in the league, whereas now they've got sort of lads who are coming on and getting winners and stuff like that. So, yeah, they look a proper team. They're confident. The fans are behind them. I'm really pleased that Jack Collins is having a lovely time.
Very much so. Football's best man.
And yeah, long may continue.
Dan, there is something here around, I look ahead of us. Now Fulham are in that category as well. Liverpool dropped down to 7th. Fulham win last night makes that happen. I look ahead of us, and I'm not that impressed by any of Newcastle, Man United or Tottenham. I'm impressed with the results, and I'm impressed with the fact that they're not dissimilar to Fulham in the case, I think, of Newcastle and Manchester United. And John's right to cite our game as a time when Newcastle didn't do it, but they very much managed to get results in the games where they should. But I don't think any of these sides play anything that can be described as scintillating football. You don't need scintillating football to come top 4, though, and I think this is a way we need to recalibrate a little bit for the challenges that are to come. I don't believe that Newcastle or Manchester United are playing great stuff, but they don't need to play great stuff to stay third and fourth, and we need to get on board that train.
Yeah, I'm not impressed by them in terms of like the pantheon of teams that I've seen play Premier League football over 20 years or so. But I'm impressed by them in comparison with who they're competing against.
Yeah.
In the Newcastle are extremely difficult to beat. That game that John was talking about is literally the only one that they've lost in the league. It must also be the only one they've lost domestically because they're still in both of the cups.
They're not got beat by
Sheffield.
Sheffield.
They got beat by Sheffield Wednesday, didn't they? Sorry. So they lost 2 then, and one's a cup game. And United for the first time in what feels like forever have a way of playing at the very least that they all seem to have bought into and have decided that that's the way forward. And it doesn't mean that it's great right now, and it seems like it needs various players added to it to be properly good, but you don't have to be properly good at the moment. I would love for Liverpool to be anything like as difficult to beat or score against as what Newcastle are, but they're not even close.
There's a thing I was talking to Alex Hirsch yesterday on Friday's show. Download the app. Friday's show's brilliant this week, by the way. But what he talked about was Dan Burn's left back. In front of Dan Burn is some combination of Joe Willock, and Joe Linton.
Joe Linton's playing left wing. So you how are you getting past that? It's really hard. And they'll by and large,
it's hard.
They're good enough to score a goal.
Yeah.
So they might just beat you 1-0 or draw 1-1 or draw 0-0 or something like that. So, I mean, they drew with Leeds recently. They drew at home with Bournemouth. It's not like these are all good results and you're going, wow, what an amazing season they're having. But if you're really consistently hard to score against and beat, then teams are not going to turn up with the belief that they're going to do either of those things. Whereas when they play against Liverpool, they're thinking, right, we're probably going to score first. What's our plan for when we score first? How do we then deal with that? Do we go for more? Do we sit off? What do we do? So that means that, at the moment, if you ask other teams throughout the league who they'd rather play against, I'm sure they'd rather play against Liverpool than against Newcastle because it's quite literally easier. You're more likely to get something out of Liverpool.
Recalibrating what we're about, Adam, I think is actually been something that I think we found a little bit difficult this season. There's been a couple of games where I think we've looked to have done it and looked to have done it quite well. But for me, it remains without getting into purchasing another footballer, which we can do. But for me, it remains the core thing that we've just sort of failed to get on board with, that ultimately going back to being horrible for a period here, that this will be a grind, a graft. We've done this before. We did it in 2020, 2021. We did it in 2016, 17. Becoming horrible to face is, I think, the next thing that we really need to do. We'll talk about Brighton in a minute, but I think it starts at Brighton. I think Brighton have got to find the whole enterprise as dispiriting as we currently are, because that's the way in which we're going to get 3 points.
Yeah, I mean, and horrible in any way. We can choose any other ways to be horrible, really. At our best, it's a hostile ground. It's a hostile, we're in teams' faces. We are, we moan with the best of them. We fight as a unit. We're fast and strong, and at the minute we're just absolutely none of those things. And we're a dream to play against, which is why teams probably would say they'd rather play at Anfield than at St James's Park, I think, at the moment. So I mean, you mentioned Tottenham, Newcastle, and Man United. I sort of, I don't know. I know why you've grouped them together, but I don't think much of Tottenham, and I think I'm not particularly. I haven't watched much of Man United, but I am impressed with their results. And I think we've already talked a bit about Newcastle, and I can imagine them maybe if they just keep doing what they're doing, just missing out, to be honest, on top four, because that's as you said, there's not tons of goals there, and I expect somebody, hopefully us, and maybe somebody else, to get their act together, possibly Tottenham, and push them out. But I mean, just to go back to Man United, I think that there is, like you said, that their results are impressing me, and I think that there's enough there to say that they look like they're starting to be a frightening prospect to play against a bit. I think they already kind of have that a bit in because of who they are, and they're always there. They're lurking in the background. Big fan base, big ground. If they're up for it, then it's not nice, and that quite quickly has turned itself on, I think. I'm not particularly looking forward to them coming to Anfield, and I think that regardless of that, because any of these teams coming to Anfield, I'd hope to beat them. It's more what they're going to do when they go to other places. And Man United are getting some impressive results, and it seems to be quite a consistent, it's the same. The same, as you say, the way of playing. It's the same players scoring. Rashford scored in the last 4 or 5 games in a row. They just look like winning, I think, every time they play. Whether that's through scintillating football or not massively difficult fixtures, but them in a big row gives you momentum going into your next tough one, whatever that is. So yeah, they're the ones that can concern me the most, not just because I hate them. They do look like they've got it together, unfortunately, for the first time in a while.
But for our point of view, John, all these sides are playing each other. So Brighton are around us. Let's be clear about that. But they are beneath us, and I think that I think in everyone's heads, Brighton are playing some absolutely marvellous stuff. But they are beneath us at the time this game kicks off when we go to the Amex, John. We'll come on and talk about that game in a minute or two. But before we get there, I just want to sort of point out that we've got Chelsea coming up after Brighton, then we've got Wolves, then we've got Everton. They're our next 4. And whilst that's going on, all these teams are playing each other, as has been said in the comments there. All these teams are playing each other. And I think that all of this happening is something which all of a sudden then the league picture can look really, really different. But we've got to get our act together. And as I say, I don't think getting our act together is whacking anyone. I don't think that's what we should be about at this sort of point. I think it is becoming the team that no one wants to face. And how we do that with the current personnel that the manager's got at his disposal is, I think, the biggest challenge that he has. Maybe in a couple of senses, the biggest challenge he's had, certainly since he didn't have any centre-halves. But he's got to make that happen some way, John.
Yeah, he has, absolutely, and that is the challenge here, because it's all well and good saying people will drop points in these next coming games because they're sort of playing each other, but to take advantage of that, we need to win our games. You need to win the games that you should do. Now Brighton are playing so well that there's an argument that is that a game you should win, or would that be a good win? If they win there, I'd probably argue it is a good win, now if you go to Brighton and win. But I think generally speaking, the other teams around us have been better at winning their winnable games. And I think, Manchester United have won 4 in a row. Now, they've had a really nice run since Christmas, it should be said, in terms of the teams that they played, but they've still beat them. They've still sort of gone and done it really ways. You look at some of our results, like of going to Nottingham Forest and things like that. Really sort of disappointing performances and really poor defeats. They've been littered sort of throughout the season really, and so we need to get much better at those. The manager needs to find a solution. Is that going to be in the transfer market? We shall see. We're all hopeful that someone else will come in, but regardless, it's do we make ourselves tougher to beat and back our forwards to get on the end of something? You put the table up before, and I noticed we've conceded twice as many goals as Newcastle, which is mad. Twice as many, and so do we sort of say, well, we're going to be just tougher to beat, we're going to sit in a little bit more and rely on our pacey forwards on the break, or do we back ourselves to be pressing high, to be getting in amongst people and to cause sorts of havoc that way? Whatever it is, you said tougher to play against, and that's it. Whether you rock hard, resolute, can't get through us, or you harrying the life out of people, whichever one it is, we need to commit to it better and make it happen.
Okay, this is TAW Live. Download the app for more and more from the Anfield Wrap coming up. You've got Stephen Smith and Gary Judge, and you've got Adam Rowe as well if you listen to this as a podcast. If you are on it as a streaming thing live early in the morning on this Friday, you'll find that we'll just flip around right now, and it is TAW Live. It is part 2 of TAW Live for this bit. Part 4 if you're listening through other means, and we'll talk about directly that Brighton game, Adam. The obvious thing to say, first and foremost, is pick me a team. That's that's what I want to see what the manager's going to do. We're doing this before the press conference. There's rumours that Darwin may not be available, which somewhat scuppers my plans of play him off the left and see if you can really hurt them that way and get through the middle. What do you think the manager should be looking to do?
Yeah, it's a bit difficult before the press conference because is it confirmed that Firmino won't make it? It seemed like it was. He's
not in the training photos again, so you just sort of left feeling as though it's unlikely to be Firmino.
Somebody said, I think James Pearce might have said that he didn't look like he'd made it, which is so frustrating, isn't it? Because it was, what was it, the 28th or something of December, where he'd had a knock and he was just missing late fitness test, and
he doesn't play at Villa, and that's
doesn't play at Villa, and at Boxing Day. and so we're 2 weeks later, and it's still, I don't know. It just seems to. I don't know whether that happens to other teams, but it's the most frustrating thing about following us, I think. So yeah, it makes the front three a bit difficult. But if you assume they're both missing, then I guess it's got to be Gakpo, Salah, Ox. You pretty much, I think, and midfield wise, I mean, it's that the big thing, isn't it? I'd have definitely started Keita the other day. Everybody probably would, I guess. That was say the other day. It was nearly a week ago, wasn't it?
I think it's mad he's not started either of the last two. Genuinely think it's mad.
It is mad.
That's not just based off the results.
And is it as mad that he wouldn't have started this one? I'd have probably started that midfield that started the other day, and this one, and not Naby. But I don't know. I think it's probably not one player's fault, and I think somebody said it's almost like the ones that are playing that get it. Whoever's played gets it in the neck, and the one who hasn't, the one who misses out, is suddenly the saviour, whoever that is. So it's a tricky one, really. And so I think I wouldn't be surprised if he went the same again. To be honest, and I think I probably would have if it was just if I knew who was playing in general at the moment, and I didn't know who'd played last time and what the result was, I'd have picked that midfield. So probably go with that.
We know that they'll play under De Zerbi, Dan. They've gone to a really quite consistent back four. Now, who plays right back, I think, is a bit of a tell between Lamptey, Gross, and Veltman. If it's Veltman, it suggests that they're planning for the fact that they're in for a bit of a tough one. It shows a certain mindset. If it's Lamptey, I think it suggests they want to get at us. If it's Gross, it maybe just suggests that the other two are injured, to be quite honest with you. But he's done all right when he's played there, Gross, this season. He's a good footballer. In midfield, I think we can expect to see that they will have some combination of Caicedo, McAllister, Lallana maybe in there. They've got another couple of midfielders they do sort of dip in and out, and Gross is obviously available for selection there as well. They've got this new lad, Evan Ferguson, up front. They've been playing March off the right, and they've got Matoma off the left. That's what we can expect from them, because that's what they've been going with pretty consistently. Now, they did get beat 4-2 by Arsenal at home, and that game did get away from them a little bit. And again, because at the minute the way we are, we sort of, I think, presume anyone who's sort of around us is some sort of super team. For me, this is a team that can be got at and has been got at in some unlikely areas over the course of this campaign. The flip side is they have scored 9 goals in the last 2. So how would you look to sort of set up against them?
I think the area in which you can get joy is down the flanks. So I think that Estupiñán, for example, is a really good player. At left back, they obviously sold Cucurella for an awful lot of money, but I think they've probably actually ended up with a better player, or certainly a player that is maybe a bit more useful for the way in which they now want to play under this manager anyway. But he's really, really attacking. He's great going forwards, and he can defend reasonably well, but it's not his strong suit. So if we're able to have Salah maybe start deep and be able to run at him or run at him off the ball, and someone's got it in midfield and look to play him in either through or over the top, then that would be really useful. Same on the other side, whoever plays really, because if it's Gross or Veltman, they're slow. Yeah, or they're going to be slower than whoever's playing there.
The weird thing is Veltman's not good in the air either, but he is a good defender. He's not quick and he's not great in the air, but he is a really good defender.
If it's Lamptey's fast, but again, he'll be going significantly, frequently more forward than the other two. So I think those are the most important positions on the pitch from a Liverpool winning the game point of view, if that makes sense. Because we could have a midfield that plays really well for once. But if good things aren't going on in those wide areas, then Liverpool are going to find it hard to score goals, I think. They defend pretty well in and around the box, unless Lewis Dunk throws a mad one in, which he is eminently capable of, but you can't plan for it. It can't be, the way we're going to score a goal is just hope that Lewis Dunk kicks it in his own net or pulls someone over or something in the box.
And he's actually getting better as a player, I think, Dunk, as he grows older.
Yeah, he just has ropey ones. He's a defender in the ilk of like Lovren or Otamendi or something, can have 6 absolutely great weeks and then just tug someone back, gives a penalty away, and you've lost.
I prefer us going there than having them at Anfield, by the way. I don't know why that is, but I prefer that it's. I think if you do get on top of them, not as a team. I think that the ground maybe does sort of packs in fairly early and was like, all right, well, we haven't won this one.
I think for me there's a thing you said about a month or so ago, which is Neil, where which is true. Sorry, you're definitely Neil. Which is the more they have to think about it, the better they are. And I think there's something about Brighton away where I agree with you, Adam, is that I think the reason I agree with you and I'm a bit more confident about it is I think going there they'll have to think about it. Like it's telling that after the game against Wolves, apparently the manager says like if you play like that against Brighton, you'll get swatted. Like he's already thinking about it, and so I think they'll be going into this being really conscious of how they can hurt us much more, and it's able to get through to the players in a way that everything doesn't. If you're like, oh, fuck
I'd
off,
like to hear the manager.
Anfield.
I'd like to hear the manager say the word "twatted," John.
I think there's also, but I think on that, I think this game is a lot to me, Dan. It's like Spurs away, where you know it's going to be unpleasant. You know you're going to a difficult place. You know you're coming up against a good side. I think they do the same thing against Villa on Boxing Day, to be honest with you. But that a good side are going to have to try and make some of the running. Like I think one of the reasons why we do well against Spurs is that Spurs in their own ground feel as though they've got to make some of the running against us early, and they're not that used to it. And I think that can play into our favour here. And what you're talking about in terms of finding space in behind, I think is a massive part of that.
Yeah, you then hope that they leave those spaces that you're subsequently set up to exploit. Liverpool have done better in quite a few games this season where they've had less of the ball. I think what John's saying kind of fits into that as well. In that I think sometimes Liverpool, when they've had less time to think, have done better in kind of like 10-minute tranches of games and stuff. Like when they were when they came back out to Brentford and they did quite well for 10 or 15 minutes. It was just, well, we're gonna have to fucking score, so we'll just play well. Like they did. There wasn't really like an overriding, oh, we're gonna change like this and that. I'm going to play totally different. I know the players came on and stuff, but it was essentially the same shape. They were just forced into not really thinking and just doing the thing that made sense.
There was the thing that worries me, I guess, is that when it, as John's just said, that if the manager said something along the lines of if we play like we did tonight against Brighton, we'll get twatted, and that is what. To me, it felt like everybody was saying at Anfield when we played Leicester, if we play like this against Brentford, we'll get twatted. And lo and behold, we did. We got twatted. So that we need. I think I can see some more green shoots in a sense against Wolves than I could against Leicester. Leicester was appalling. I couldn't believe, and it's shockingly bad. I couldn't believe how bad we were really. And I think Wolves...
Leicester wrecked my head so much. The first 30 minutes of Leicester was mind-boggling.
I still can't get my head around it, to be honest. I would like an explanation.
Like people to come in and just explain what it was that they were up to. Leicester was just unreal. To be in the ground... I'll remember being in the ground for Leicester the whole of my life.
Yeah. So, I mean, Wolves, we at least scored 2 good goals. And... that's it. Basically, I was trying to think of other positives, but I mean, we completely dissolved. So I don't know, and that needs to be addressed. Our mentality across 10-minute sections of games is just absent, as far as I can tell. There isn't a mentality, so that needs to be addressed. And I think, as you say, something like a Brighton is there's an element of it which is not like Brentford, which we knew would be really hostile, like going to Napoli almost, isn't it? You know, there's no time to think. The crowd's on top of you. They're probably going to score, and then you can't get your breath, and they've scored again. And I don't see that really from Brighton. But there's different things to cope with, despite them being a better team than Brentford. It's sort of a fixture I'd slightly rather be playing. Yeah. It's along the lines of I don't know. You could say Fulham as well. They're near each other in the table. It's probably them two doing well that's made it seem like the sort of season when anybody can beat anybody. But it's that kind of thing that we need to start turning round, because as we play our fixtures, we are always on paper the better team, and we always have things happening in a game, which means that we should win. We've had zero luck. I think we need the first thing to happen tomorrow to be in our favour. The first main thing that happens being in our favour would help.
It would indeed. Dan, would you take 0-0 on 60? I'm not going to ask you for a prediction. Would you take 0-0 on 60?
Yeah.
Adam, would you take 0-0 on 60?
Absolutely, yeah.
John, would you take 0-0 on 60? Big thumbs up from John Gibbons there, taking 0-0 on 60. That's sort of where we are. 0-0 on 60 is absolutely fine in football matches, especially away games against top half teams. We've sort of forgotten that bit of football, I think, somewhere at Liverpool. And not in a sort of this is what it's like to come for the top four way. The year we won the league, there was a lot of games where Liverpool were tied 0-0 or 1-1 at the hour mark. It is away from home. It is absolutely fine for that to be the case in games of football that you play. And then you find your way through, and it creates doubt in opponents. So far this season, Liverpool have given opponents certainty. They've given them something to believe in. They've given them so much encouragement. Next 4 games, Reds, it starts tomorrow at the Amex. No encouragement whatsoever. Thanks to everyone who's been on the show.